Disco Elysium was a game that hit me at a very important moment in my life. I had just started a new corporate kind of professional role at work, and I was really itching to just play something kind of casual and relaxing, a little text-based adventure, now fully voiced, making it easier for me to dive into. Seemed like the right kind of game, but it wasn't minutes after I started Disco Elysium that I realized this adventure would be anything but. And I took that adventure and am here today and would love to share my thoughts with you. And that was a while back, but to also share my thoughts on watching as a spectator the second time my wife play through the game quite recently. So I'm excited to be talking about this 2019 release from the company Zaum, which is the publisher and developer for Disco Elysium. This company was founded in 2016 by Robert Kurvitz. So he's an Estonian writer who served as lead writer and designer on the game. And kind of a funny backstory. So as the story goes, it's a drunken evening, and Kurvitz and his band, they're hanging out listening to DJ Tiesto, which I love because I think DJ Tiesto, we're somewhere in the later 2000s, right? Or maybe that's just my era. But while doing so, Kurvitz is conceiving a fictional world called Elysium. And he kind of reached out to his network of musician and artist friends and began developing a tabletop RPG on the concepts. And also Kurvitz wrote a novel to accompany the concept. And that novel is called Sacred and Terrible Air. And I actually ended up reading this novel. You can find it on the internet quite easily. And I enjoyed it quite a bit, I just gotta have to say. And if you're somebody who has played Disco Elysium or is interested in playing Disco Elysium after you've played through it might be worth a read if you're kind of in a similar situation, right? So, unfortunately, the book sold quite poorly. Kurvitz's failings led to some period of alcoholism, depression for him, which is a shame, especially knowing what would become of the future of Disco Elysium. And what ended up happening is Kar Kinder, who was a fellow author of Kurvitz, kind of helped Kurvitz overcome this period. And Kinder had suggested, hey, you should take these ideas, pursue video games as a medium, and tell your story to a broader audience. And maybe that would be an option for you. So this is where Kurvitz began kind of conceiving of Revachol, which is a place where D&D meets a 90s cop show aesthetic. That was the style he was going for. Really taking the ideas built on games like Planescape Torment, Baldur's Gate, and enhancing the style and kind of modernizing the style of those games. And so Disco Elysium first got announced as No Truce with the Furies, and Kurvitz then established Zaum to create the game. So he had received some seed money from Kender, some of his friends and families, and also with the backing of an Estonian businessman named Margus Linnamäe. Kurvitz was able to kind of seek out the band Sea Power to produce the album during his trips to England and seeing all of these funders and stuff like that, and also move the team to England as well. So a very interesting little history about the game. One of the cool things that I learned when reading about and learning more about Disco Elysium is disco, while we would, associate that with the 70s movement era of music, was not only to refer to the protagonist's style, which he has this more disco-esque aesthetic, but also to really take the literal sense of the word disco, where it has a Latin root for the word I learn. And learning is a essential part of playing Disco Elysium, from how the game starts and the protagonist's adventure through the player's interaction with the game. So I just found that to be a very interesting little trivia piece that I learned about Disco Elysium and its development. And the game was developed in Unity. It was self-published, went on to achieve what I would call universal acclaim. And the Final Cut version was later released in 2021 with a handful of refreshments, a fully voiced narrative, new politics-related quests, which are quite interesting. So yeah, that's a little bit about the background, but that doesn't end just there. Later in 2022, so quite recently, Kurvitz and the lead art director for the game, Alexander Rostov, and the writer, Hine Hindeper. I hope I said that right. I don't know. They were all fired from Zaum, and there were some later statements from Kurvitz and Rostov. They stated that the studio was majority owned by Margus Lename, the businessman who seeded the game early on in its development. This got sold, the company. And there were funds for making that purchase that were pulled from the studio itself. So the Kurvitz and Rostov, they were challenging the purchase and seeking to recover the IP. The company had claimed that the two were fired for creating a disruptive work environment and gender discrimination, and lawsuits were thrown back and forth, and some were subsequently dropped. So just a lot of haymakers happening around the studio. And you know, the really sad part is in the pursuit of making great art, this stuff kind of has to get in the way, and it's hard to know the exact legitimacy, at least as of me recording this video, as to what's going on there. There was planned to be an eventual sequel for Disco Elysium, but with so much turmoil and, you know, the core creative head's gone. What is next? Who knows? But we do actually have the game itself to take a look at. So happy we got at least this game. And so let's just do exactly that. This is the IM 8-bit version of the Final Cut release. So on the front we have our two main characters, Kim Kitsuragi and the protagonist. And on the spine, looks kind of nice with the orange and whites. And the back says, "Get dressed, detective. The city awaits." Disco Elysium, the Final Cut, is the definitive edition of the groundbreaking role-playing game. You're a detective with a unique skill set at your disposal and a whole city block to carve your path across. Interrogate unforgettable characters, crack murders, or take bribes, become a hero or an absolute disaster of a human being. So, and then here we have on the back. Quite a clean, nice backside to this copy. And if we open the game up, we see a degree of repetitive art here on the CD, but then also we get I got an IM 8-bit sticker, which I guess you'll get if you purchase the game. And then finally we get, which I just dropped, and we're back, a poster. And this poster kind of shows some of the psychology stuff from the game itself. So here we go. Quite a cool poster. Am I holding it the right way? Hard for me to tell at this angle. Here we are. That's looking more right. And one thing I just gotta say, just looking at this poster, and I'll comment on later as well, but I just love the art style and the many styles actually employed throughout the game. It makes for an incredible piece of work just overall. So let me just put all this back together. We'll get the game up on the shelf and then we will talk through it. Alrighty, there we are. So yeah, let's talk about Disco Elysium. The game takes place in Revishal's seaside district. Revishal is a city, and the city is still recovering from a revolution that occurred decades before. So you wake up a nameless, purposeless detective without an understanding of where you are, what brought him here, and I'm off to discover that you're tasked with solving a murder mystery. And the detective will, along with the help of his partner Kim Kitsuragi, explore Revishal and its very odd cast of characters to uncover the truth about themselves and the suspect behind the murder. So the narrative and story drive the entirety of the Disco Elysium gaming experience. So most of the time you'll be directed and directly engaged in dialogue with other characters. And I gotta say, the writing is very deep and complex. It pulls you into its world and its lore. And you'll experience this through both inner and outer dialogue as you communicate with characters, of course, but also internally with yourself and kind of how you designed your character to be. So these can be dynamic across the course of the game and kind of how you set your character up. So super effective, very interesting. I had a lot of fun just going through the story itself. And the game tackles many deep and mature themes, right? This isn't like a kid's kind of visual novel adventure, for instance. We're talking existentialism, a journey of self-discovery, dealing with amnesia, really just developing your character and their personality traits over the course of the game. And you have multiple intersections of political and sociological ideologies and struggles, dealing with mental health, addiction, morality, a matter-of-factism to its story presentation. So not only is the game's narrative heavy and interesting, it's also incredibly entertaining, it's hilarious, and depressing, both at the same time. So there is a sense of wonder and discovery embedded in Disco Elysium that's really hard to quantify in other games, but I think is very evident here. And so if you're looking for something more deep and complex in its narrative structure, I think this is the exact game meant for you to be playing. You know, I assume a lot of this really originates from Kurvitz's origins as a novelist and writer first. He didn't come initially from the video game development world and then tack on the story. He came from, I have this story, this world, this lore built, let's integrate some gameplay aspects around it. And I feel for that, this narrative is so unique and interesting in a way that is hardly captured in many games nowadays. So that's a little bit about the story. Let's talk about the gameplay, which is definitely an interesting world, so to speak. So this game is an isometric game, wherein you're going to navigate the world, interacting with highlighted world objects and NPCs. So there's not really a combat system, though the game has a lot of RPG elements, which kind of break out into 4 primary ability traits. So you have like intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics. And so dialogue that you get as a player and actions you'll be able to take are often skill checked. And so you'll build these out over the course of the game, and some skill checks will be harder, some will be easier. This is a game where save scumming is something that's really challenging to avoid, but I would highly encourage you to play the game without doing so. I think you're going to get a lot out of it if you just go through it, you fail with the motions, and continue on, because there's not really a way to get soft locked in the game, which is to say you kind of fail a skill check and now you can't proceed forward anymore. So just play it with an open heart, man. Just go in there and just have fun with it. And if your character's personality traits aren't up for the task, there are various items and clothing that you can equip to modify the strengths and weaknesses of your character as well, to make it through some of those skill checks. So I did quite enjoy this system. There's another system built on top of it called bots, and these are various kind of permanent perspectives you can unlock over the course of the game, and when you internalize those perspectives, they'll give you permanent game buffs and debuffs, kind of similar to the trait systems you would see in like a game like Fallout. So I did quite enjoy these aspects, because internalizing thoughts is not only funny and interesting, you'll unlock new dialogue options. They're designed to give you both pros and cons to play, and some of them can be quite funny one way or another. So yeah, depending on how you increase or decrease your skills as well, there's a lot of internal monologue discussions, which I was mentioning before, and these will open up with and offer additional insight, like helping guide the player's decision making, or also throw off the character's sensibility in some discussions, which can be led astray at times by your internal monologuing. So these systems, they're pretty straightforward once you've had a couple of hours playing under your belt, but also incredibly deep in how they help shape the narrative and what gets told to the player. So having played the game through twice now, you know, I played a different cop each time. The first time I played what I felt like is how I typically play a game, where I'm the good cop and I'm trying to do the right thing and so on and so forth. And so the second time, I was so intrigued at how the narrative would change that I had to play as a complete druggy lunatic. And the game totally allows for that, and the narrative bends to make that possible. So from a gameplay perspective, I just found it impressive how this is one of those games where your decision making will help determine the outcome of certain circumstances, but it's not so scripted as in to say you can go point A or you can go point B. It's a lot more fluid in how many of the narrative beats come out. You still kind of arrive at the same conclusions to a lot of the core outcomes of the story, but how you get there and what happens along the way, the journey, we often say, is the most important part, and Disco Elysium really has that right, and again bends that to your will as the player. So very much a lot of fun. And a couple things that I wanted to note as well: the UI, it's pretty straightforward, even from a console perspective. Some other interesting things is that the character that you play as has a distinctive weight to their movement. I don't know how exactly to describe it. It's not super snappy. It does take a little bit of adjustment, but again, it's not like you're in a combat scenario or real-time scenario like doing platforming or something where you need to be very accurate with your movement, so not a big deal. And other times I've found that you can be in an area where there's a lot of interactable highlights, and it can lead to some targeting confusion in the system, something that I'm sure is much more easy to accomplish if you have like a mouse cursor kind of guiding you along. So especially in the first playthrough, you know, you might find yourself skill locked and without much purpose at some points, like not knowing some events will only unfold on subsequent days, or not knowing that eventually time is going to stop advancing in the day, leaving you an opportunity to clean up things, and there's not really a penalty for letting it get too late in the evening. You know, things like that will really kind of change the dynamics of how you play the game once you begin to kind of realize them more. But from a gameplay lens, this game's fun, it's weird, it's interesting, it's unique, and I love all those things about Disco Elysium. I had so much fun just from a gameplay and narrative perspective enjoying the game. But there are some other things I did want to comment on, kind of speaking about the sound and visual presentation and quality of this game, and so let's discuss that a little bit. One of the big things that happened with the final cut is there was a fully voiced narrative built into the title. So voice acting, which was added in, as I was mentioning, is fantastic. The voices are distinct, the NPCs are all unique in the way they communicate and they sound, their dialects, their timbre, their rhythm to their discussions. And I found it very impressive how no one felt particularly generic. I mean, just standing here thinking about the characters, there are so many that come to mind. I can hear their voices, I can see the portraits of them, think about the things that they felt as a person, which I just find to be very impressive that I can do so having, you know, played this game. And not only that, but you'll also have all these internal monologue voices, which from your limbic system's kind of scrawling, scratchy, high-pitched voice to this more deep, demonic sounding inner monologue that pushes throughout the game. These were just so impressive and entertaining to listen to. I really couldn't skip any of the audio moments, even when I was reading ahead in the script itself, so I loved that. From a sound effects lens, the game there's not a whole lot going on, so nothing particularly standing out to me, but one thing I did want to say is that the music is incredible. It's incredible. The commissioning of a whole band to create the soundtrack is an awesome idea. It adds a level of cohesion and creativity to the world's sound, which overall just adds to the world's personality as a result. And because of that, and because we're not relying on the same 5 mega composers that create every game to make the title, you know, this isn't like a John Williams situation where he wins I don't even know what awards are they doing the movies worlds anymore, Oscars, or I don't know. I just love that there's a lot of dynamic personality presented here in the sound, from the voice acting to the music. It was very fun. And visually, that's not even to share anything from its personality given through its style. The game has so many different art styles in its presentation. You'll see oil painting, you'll see expressionism, you'll see graphic novel style art, surrealism, noir. These art styles give Disco Elysium an extremely unique and engaging visual presentation, one that I've yet to see matched in a game. I love the style. I find it interesting from the moment you look at the art cover to the final scenes of the game, which I won't ruin for you because they're incredible and had my jaw dropped. The game does struggle, especially in the early stages, If you're going to load, reload, your safe's coming around. Not to chug and stutter at some of those times when it's rebuilding things, but that's just more of a technical hiccup. But otherwise, the game is super technically impressive. Excuse me. It looks incredible. It's a timeless style. This is a game that in 20 or 30 years, I'm sure I'll look at and still think it looks just as unique, impressive, and lovely as I do today. So that's kind of overall. I mean, I'm putting this game up on a pedestal, and for good measure. Disco Elysium, from top to bottom, is a game that it just comes along once in a console generation. You know, it's really such a unique game, and it has a heartbreaking story behind its development and history, knowing that there could have been a sequel, and there's likely never going to be one, and if there is one, it's surely not going to be the unique piece that we got with Disco Elysium here. So if you haven't played the game, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. You really got to go out and give it a try and put a few hours into it. If it's not sticking with you right away, just hold on and enjoy the ride, because I think by the time you get to the end, you'll realize just how incredible it truly is. So, and if you have played Disco Elysium, would love to know your thoughts. How did you feel about the game? Did you enjoy it as much as I? Did you have other opinions? Would love to know. And if you liked the video, please like the video and subscribe. Would love for you to join the channel and join me to discuss games that I'm playing. So, all right, well, until next time, stay well, stay healthy. Look forward to seeing you again. All right, see you guys.